This 4-syllable motif might sound simple on the surface, but there's actually 5 different parts of Epic's musical language all blending together here intentionally, working to convey the full intensity of the moment. And for myself, when I learned what all 5 of these building blocks meant, it completely changed the way that I hear this song and this musical forever. So whether you've never heard of Epic the Musical before, or you're an Epic superfan, I'm gonna give you all of the context that you need to go from hearing this as a cool intro to recognizing this as the terrifying sound of a man-made monster who has just encountered all of his prey in one spot and is about to begin the hunt. Epic the Musical is a retelling of Homer's The Odyssey, created by Jorge Rivera. The snippet you just heard comes from Odysseus, the 38th song in the musical. Yeah, you heard that right. Song 38. There's 40 songs in total because Epic is a fully sung through musical like Hamilton or Hadestown, which means that you can understand the entire story just by listening to the album. And while I could literally yap for 57 hours about every single detail that I love about this musical, which he's definitely heard, I'm hoping that breaking down this one motif paints a really clear picture of just how deep Epic's musical storytelling is willing to go. Oh, and I guess I should probably add a spoiler warning. In case you've somehow avoided reading the Odyssey or haven't seen the new movie yet, this will spoil the main plot points of the Odyssey. But I'll avoid spoiling the major creative twist that Epic adds to the story. Although if I'm being honest, giving a spoiler warning for a story that's been around for like 2,800 years feels a little bit like this meme of the 250 million year old sea salt that just expired in 2019. It's bad luck, bro. So just consider yourself warned.
You don't think I know my own palace? I built it!
All right, so the first building block is what Jorge calls the danger is nearby motif, but the normal people in the room just call it the danger motif. The first time we hear this motif is in the very first song, right when Odysseus and the boys are jumping out of the big wooden horse thingy and sacking the city of Troy.
Don't you mean the Trojan horse?
How did you get in my house? Basically, it plays whenever there is danger nearby, and okay, Jorge, look, stop laughing at your screen. I get why you named it that, okay? But can you just let me have one?
Yes, sir! Diomedes will lead the charge. Agamemnon will flank the guards. Menelaus will let our mates through the gates.
We also hear it in No Longer You, when Odysseus and crew literally sail to the underworld to meet with the blind prophet Tiresias, and this prick has the audacity to say, bro, I think I see your wife with some weird dude, instead of telling the goat that he...
with a man who is haunting, a man with a trail of bodies.
In fact, the danger motif is one of the most frequently used motifs in Epic the Musical. It even shapeshifts into triplets when Poseidon appears to just... Cyclops? Although the Cyclops did nothing wrong. Polyphemus did nothing wrong. Okay, speaking of the danger motif representing names, when this nobody fails to make a deal with the Cyclops Polyphemus, get it? Nobody? Because it's Odysseus. You have read the material, right? We hear this danger motif played in the same shape as we heard in the snippet in the beginning. This is especially important because Polyphemus represents one of Epic the Musical's biggest themes, the monster.
I'll become the monster.
And so now we can tie in the danger with the monster, and in doing so confirm that Odysseus is Walter White.
I am the danger.
This is probably a good time as ever to mention that when people hear this chant, they often hear "Old King save us" instead of Odysseus, almost as if the servants inside the palace are calling for the old king, Odysseus, to save them from the scheming suitors. You know what I think about that? Honestly, I kind of like the interpretation. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's probably intentional. But Odysseus is a direct musical callback to Polyphemus in this song Survive.
Hey! Listen! What's up?
Now in the 38th song, Odysseus employs these tactics against his enemies that he learned from the monsters and divine beings that kept him away from his home for 20 years. And so before Odysseus begins his slaughter, the chant is already telling us what is about to happen. This time, he's not fighting a monster, he's become the monster. By now you've probably noticed the sick guitar riff that plays right before the danger motif. This is also very intentional. The melody inside that riff is actually part of a different motif called the trickster motif, which is the first motif that we hear in the musical. But if I have to add the trickster motif to this list, we will be here for another 2 hours, so let's just focus on the guitar part. In Epic the Musical, each character's music is tied to a different musical instrument. For Odysseus, that instrument is a guitar. This is one of the fundamental building blocks of Epic's musical language. And while assigning a specific instrument to a character might sound extremely limiting at first, it's actually incredibly versatile. When we hear an electric guitar, it usually means that Odysseus is in battle mode or strategy mode. But when the guitar turns acoustic, it reveals his vulnerability. And even within acoustic guitars, a steel string represents one level of vulnerability, while a nylon string guitar reveals an even deeper sense of vulnerability. There are many more layers to this concept, but I think you get the point. So when we hear this guitar riff, we're not hearing a vulnerable... Just kidding. We're not hearing a vulnerable Odysseus. We're hearing the music of a man who is prepared to hunt.
I have had enough.
The final building block is what I call nature versus divine. In Epic, the music draws a clear distinction between the sounds that belong to the natural world and the sounds that belong to the divine. Okay, the rule is true, but maybe the line isn't as clear, but only because in Greek mythology, nature and divinity are very often intertwined. But the natural side would include humans, nature, and basically anything mortal. And because those things exist in the physical world, their music has to obey physical limitations. I guess the best way I can describe it is that even in the case of an electric guitar, it has to make the sound that it was originally intended to make. None of that weird reality bending, voodoo magic stuff like distortion that completely changes the original sound. And if you're wondering why Prince gets a pass here, he doesn't, okay? That shit wasn't human, that was divine. If you want that kind of sound, you're gonna need to dip your toes in the river of the divine. Just make sure you get your heel in there too. I know a guy, don't worry about it. Because the divine have the gods, and what do the gods care for the rules of mortals? Whenever a god or a divine force is involved, the music can add audio effects, synths, whatever it wants. It doesn't have to follow the rules. And this applies to the ensemble as well. If you're on the side of nature, those vocals need to come from real people that are there in the scene. So if you're Odysseus and you want to do a whole call and response thing, you better make sure that you have 600 men behind you.
600 men. 600 men under my command, with only one goal in mind.
Make it back alive to our homeland.
Or else you're gonna be singing a pretty sad solo.
600 men, 600 deaths under my command, 'cause I had one goal in mind. No fleet, no bad.
But the divine, who cares? They can do whatever they want. Backup vocals galore. They can conjure up whatever they want, whoever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. You think Zeus is paying for his own backup vocals when he does this?
Pride is a damsel in distress.
So based on everything we've learned, this motif should be pretty easy to explain. Odysseus is a human, so his guitar shouldn't have any unnatural effects on it. And the backup vocal should sound like a bunch of very real servants singing a praise chorus for their returning king. Wait, that guitar is pretty grungy, huh? And those chants don't sound like servants. They actually sound like the same kind of chants Polyphemus got right before he was about to murder everyone for breaking into his home and killing his dog, which, by the way, he had every right to do. They
It
broke
wasn't
into
a dog, it was a sheep.
How did you get into my house again? Okay, so apparently it's a little more complicated than that. I guess it's not just nature or divine. There's actually a third entity here, one that we've already talked about before. The monster. Which means it's not a rivalry, it's actually a love triangle. And then the monster is a home wrecker because the monster doesn't respect the rules of nature or the divine. It steals from both and answers to neither. Neither. You get what I mean. We can hear a perfect example of this when Antinous, the leader of the suitors, sings in Little Wolf.
What die, little wolf, die. Don't you know it's vital? Fly, little wolf, fly. Or because you had to try, little wolf, try. Run away before you die, little wolf, die, little wolf, die.
Antinous isn't just trying to take Odysseus' wife or his throne, he's trying to replace Odysseus. And so his music commits to this identity theft. Odysseus gets a guitar, so Antinous gets a guitar. But it's not Odysseus' guitar. That guitar got locked up in the Ithica cellar with Eren Yeager's dad's secret, and that's not the point. Just listen to this. It's dirty, it's distorted. It takes Odysseus' mortal instrument and twists it into something perverse. And you might be tempted to say, well, that's just divine, right? But even in the case of the divine, the difference is the clarity of which the instruments change the audio. That is divine. This monster. Antinous has no respect for human rules. He'll take the throne and he'll beat the shit out of a teenager in order to do it. Like, bro, come on. Like, what's wrong with you? Okay, admittedly, he had plans to do way worse things than that, I guess, but I digress. Nor does he have any respect for the gods. There is an entire sacred Greek law of hospitality called
Xenia.
Xenia.
Right.
Xenia.
But was I not saying Xenia?
Xenia is often said by him as a
There is an entire sacred Greek law of hospitality called Xenia that is literally protected by Zeus himself, which says guests and hosts have a certain obligation to each other. And look, I'm not an expert on Xenia, but unless the Greeks passed some kind of amendment that I missed, I'm pretty sure that there's nothing in there saying that you can post up in another man's home for years, harass his family, try to take his throne, and steal his entire kingdom. Which brings us back to Odysseus, not the posting up thing. That was actually Calypso's doing, but I mean like the 20 years thing and the monster thing. Right before this moment, Odysseus had been hiding amongst the suitors and listening in on their plans. But the Odysseus that had finally returned home was not the same man who left 20 years before. His guitar is grungy. His name is echoed by chanting voices in the darkness, and this is where everything that we have talked about finally comes together. Because the real horror of this song comes when you consider its perspective. This song is not presented from the perspective of Odysseus. It's presented from the perspective of the suitors. The men who broke into someone else's home, ate his food, drank his wine, and were just boasting about all of the things that they were going to do to his son and wife. And then an arrow flies through the air and plants itself firmly in the neck of their leader. And in that moment, they realize who has been standing in the room with them, listening in on everything they have just been saying. But I don't think they see a man anymore. And honestly, I don't think they see a monster. They were seeing something much worse, something they couldn't comprehend, something that sounds a little bit like
at the edge of the unknown. Somewhere in the shadows lurks an agile, deadly foe. We have the advantage, we've the numbers and the might.
No, you don't understand it. This man plans for every fight.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. I love making these videos and this one was so fun to make. I ended up spending 5 times the amount of time that I thought I would just because every little edit was so fun. So if you want to hide from Odysseus, I hear that my paid Patreon members are safe because they're part of the North Pack Discord server. And just to be clear, if you watch this far, you are part of the North Pack. Anytime that I say the North Pack, this is my community. This is you. But if you want to be a part of the Discord server and you want to stay safe from Odysseus and you have the means, then consider joining my Patreon Patreon. I really appreciate it. It will help me so much to be able to make these videos more often. And remember, North Pack, if you stay wild, you stay free. Adios.